Hello, everyone. I'm Tyler Chrestman, and welcome to the Chrestman Conversation. Today on the podcast, we are going to be talking about what is my absolute favorite story in the news in the last couple weeks. Everything in the past month has been nothing but Ukraine, with just a sprinkling in of other topics that haven't been that interesting. But this one is actually pretty cool. We're going to talk about Elon Musk potentially buying Twitter. Now, most people in the country don't actually use Twitter. But for people who are really connected to politics and really into things of that nature, they're on Twitter. All those people are on Twitter, which is why Twitter is terrible most of the time. Twitter is a garbage platform, but it is pretty fun. It is not a good place to have civil discourse and dialogue, which is its intended purpose, but it's a good place to dunk on people you don't like, which is what I'm there for because it just makes me laugh. So you see a bunch of crazy people on there, and because Twitter is only used, at least in the little sphere that I observe, because it's only used by people who are really politically active, it tends to gravitate towards the most extreme. So you see terrible people on the right, just the worst of the worst, and the terrible people on the left, the craziest leftists that you can. And you just watch those people argue all day, and it's pretty fun. Now, there is a lot of, you can actually find good content on Twitter that is useful and good. There are great people to follow on there. But I like it mostly just for the humor aspect. There are people linked to news articles, which is actually how you find a lot of news, things that people are talking about in political spheres. They're good to use. But Twitter as a rule is basically a dumpster fire. It's not great. It is just where you go see the worst of the worst on both sides. But I enjoy it because of that. It makes me laugh because these people who think that they're the arbiters of truth on the left, your journalists, your blue check journalists, those people just have the worst takes, and you realize that the people that you put in positions of power in the media, in the government, they are definitely not smarter than you, and they are definitely, in a lot of cases, dumber than you. So anyway, we're going to talk about this story because Elon Musk is potentially buying Twitter. Now, last week, or almost 2 weeks ago at this point, he bought a 9% stake of Twitter for something like $2 billion, making him the single largest shareholder of the platform. This was a big deal because Twitter has very often been accused of being a very biased platform. They are very censorious when it comes to people with right-wing opinions. So, for example, you can't say certain things on Twitter like a man is never a woman. You can't say that. They'll take it down as hate speech. Now, whether or not you think that that's accurate, whether or not you think that that is hateful, whether or not that you think that that is mean-spirited, there's a large section of the population who believes that, and to curate what the conversation is based on a political agenda under the guise of we're anti-bullying is ridiculous. So Twitter, for all of its talk about wanting to be a free speech platform and a place for civil discourse, a place for dialogue, it doesn't do any of that. It is really a place where you are not allowed to have opinions outside of what modern leftists think today. Never mind that 5 years ago, that conversation would look completely different than it does today because the modern left has lost its mind in a lot of really important ways, especially on the gender and the race stuff. But this is the problem with Twitter. It's not a free speech platform. It is a private company. They can do what they want. The argument has become, should a private company that claims to be the new town square, the new public square, have the right to curate conversation without any sort of blowback on them as a company? I don't think they should. I think if you're a place like Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, then if you curate based on content, that doesn't make you a platform. It makes you a publisher, and you should be subject to libel and slander laws. And I think that would stop that problem immediately, because the second that you have to pay the Catholic Covington kid a bunch of money because people slandered him on Twitter, and you curated the conversation so that only one side is heard, well, then Twitter stops doing that, and it becomes a free speech platform as it was intended to be. Now, Twitter melted down when Elon Musk bought 9% of the shares because people on Twitter, your leftists on Twitter, they don't like free speech. They don't. They think it's a good thing. They think that the conversation should be curated and that opinions should be silenced if those opinions are outside the Overton window. The problem is that their Overton window is about the size of the eye of a needle. And they only want things that fit through that eye of a needle to be able to be said on the platform. Now, this is ridiculous, and for obvious reasons. Free speech is our most important right that we have as human beings. It's impossible to think out loud and not be offensive to some people. You have to be able to have conversations where people don't agree and not name call people and assume the worst intentions at all time. There's a rule. I don't remember the name of the rule, but it's actually a really good policy to have, which is never attribute malice to something that could be explained by incompetence. I think it's a good rule. I try and practice it online. I don't assume everyone has bad intentions. I just assume most people don't know what they're talking about. And it works out for you. So Elon Musk was offered a spot on the board of Twitter, and it looked like he was going to join that. There was talk about him trying to come in and make changes, but he declined the spot, and everyone said, well, why would he do that? What's the point here? Oh, maybe he didn't know that, maybe he didn't think that he was ever going to make a change, and blah, 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 a bunch of reasons. And then it came out, well, if he joined the board, it would limit his ability to own more than something like 12% of the company, something along those. So then people started saying, well, maybe he's going to do a hostile takeover of the board. And then today, or not the board, of the company. And then today, that came true. Today, woke up to the news that Elon Musk made an offer, $43 billion to buy 100% of Twitter. This is apparently 54% over what would be a fair price for Twitter. So it's a gigantic thing that the board basically cannot refuse. In my opinion, I feel like if they refuse, then everyone on that board should be kicked off because they're not acting in the best interest of their company, which is to make money for their shareholders. This will make everyone who owns shares of Twitter a ton of money. So anyway, I'm going to read the letter that Elon Musk sent to the board. Here's a letter that he sent, a formal letter to Brett Taylor, who is the chairman of Twitter's board. Here's the quote. I invested in Twitter as I believe in its potential to be a platform for free speech around the globe, and I believe free speech is a social imperative for a functioning democracy. However, since making my investment, I now realize the company will neither thrive nor serve this social imperative in its current form. Twitter needs to be transformed as a private company. As a result, I am offering to buy 100% of Twitter for $54.20 per share in cash, a 54% premium over the day before I began investing in Twitter, and a 38% premium over the day before my investment was publicly announced. My offer is my best and final offer, and if not accepted, I would need to reconsider my position as a shareholder. Twitter has extraordinary potential. I will unlock it. End of quote. Now, people are freaking out about this because people on the left don't want free speech. They claim to like free speech, but they don't like free speech. They only like free speech when it agrees with their opinion. Anything outside of their opinion, according to them, is either transphobic or homophobic or racist or bigoted or it's mean to whatever group that they're currently talking about. If you come out and say you're against welfare, they say you don't like black people, even though most welfare is used by whites in Appalachia. So it doesn't matter what the position is. The name calling and the ad hominems will come no matter what. So they don't like free speech. They don't want these opinions to be expressed. The Babylon Bee is currently still suspended from Twitter for making Rachel Levine their man of the year. Ridiculous. A satire website got permanently banned from Twitter for making a joke. And they say, well, that joke's too offensive. You're out of here. Okay, well, if Twitter is a private company and if Elon Musk, who is, I don't know if he would use this term, he's not a member of the party or anything, but he has very libertarian leanings. I've listened to him talk enough to know that he does not believe in big government. He thinks the government's pretty much bad at everything, which is an opinion that I myself hold and many libertarians. So he has a libertarian idea of free speech, which is that as long as it doesn't violate the actual laws of the United States, people should be allowed to say it, even if they're offensive, even if they're jerks. Even if they're saying it just to be inflammatory, you should be able to send. You should be able to say it. And there's a block button for a reason on Twitter. You're not forced to interact with anyone. So you don't have to read mean tweets. Oh, if it hurts your feelings. Grow up. It's the internet. That's all I'm going to say about that. You don't have to read it. And Elon Musk is going to potentially, after he takes control of this company, make it into a free speech platform. And people don't actually want to see that. They don't want free speech in this country anymore. This was the divergence that I had from people on the left, was the idea that free speech is paramount, was always a left-wing value. The ACLU defended the rights of Nazis to march in Spokane. And everyone on the left cheered that because they understood that we don't like Nazis. Nazis are bad. They're bad people. But if you curb their right to protest and march, then you can do it to anyone. And the left used to understand that. The ACLU used to understand that. But these companies lost their way. And that was where I first parted my ways with progressivism, is I saw people who said, well, you can't say that. And I said, absolutely I can. There's no reason why we shouldn't say that if we believe it to be true. If you believe something to be true, you have to say it. It might not wind up being true. It might not wind up being the case that you're correct, but you have to be able to think, and you have to be able to think out loud. You have to be able to make mistakes and grow and learn, and you don't do that if you are censored, if you're silenced into these places that Twitter says are unacceptable. Like right now, obviously the big one is about gender and things like that. You'll have people who say that the Babylon Bee should never be allowed to come back on Twitter again because they made fun of Rachel Levine, even though, it's kind of funny. And so the idea is that they don't want the free speech. They don't want it. And they don't want Elon Musk to take control because he has a libertarian leaning and he will implement free speech. I can't wait. If he does take over the board, then I can't wait for day one when we see Donald Trump back on Twitter, because the entire left, they might just actually self-immolate. They might just explode. I'm not sure they're going to be able to handle it if they have to wake up one day and they have to get on their Twitter and read good morning from former President Donald Trump. I think that their minds might actually explode. It'd be like scanners, and that's no good. So I just wanted to talk about this because I wanted to say that right now the media, and the media does include social media companies. Don't get it mistaken. Most people get their news from social media. It's links to articles that are in the newspaper, or links to news articles that appeared on cable news, but they're getting their news from the media. It's not coming. They're not going to CNN.com and getting it, but they're reading an article. Well, not CNN. No one reads CNN, but they're reading the article from Fox News or MSNBC. They're reading it through a link on Facebook. They're reading it through someone's link on Twitter, or they're reading it, or they're learning about it from a podcast that they listen to. Social media companies are the media. So when I say that the media shouldn't be controlled by people who want to curate reality, this is what I mean. Elon Musk is actually putting his money where his mouth is. He's putting $43 billion of his money up to say all he wants to do. He doesn't want to control what you see. He doesn't want to influence your opinion. He does not want to influence your line of thinking. The other people cannot say that. The other social media companies cannot say that. They have agendas. They have opinions. They want you to only see what they want you to see because they want you to think a certain way. And that's not good. Facebook right now won't, for example, this podcast. I don't consider anything I say to be crazy controversial. Sometimes I have fun. Sometimes we joke and laugh, and I have some opinions, I guess, that are a little offensive to some people. But I don't say anything to be offensive or mean, unless I'm talking about AOC, in which case, she's an idiot. But I don't say anything just to offend large groups of people for fun. I say things because I believe them, or I say things because I believe them to be true, and I want to talk about them. But Facebook won't let you advertise a podcast like this. They won't let you share anything that talks about social issues anymore. They don't do it. But yet, the Washington Post can, the New York Times can, but something like this, not allowed to. Something like that talks about social issues on a small scale isn't allowed to grow anymore. Facebook for a long time actually was the number one trajectory of views on this podcast came through Facebook. It went up and up and up. And then in the end of 2020, I believe, after a year of it going up and up and up on Facebook, they throttled it. They really did. And so this podcast doesn't do views on Facebook anymore because Facebook made a conscious decision to ratchet down on organic growth in podcasts that talk about social issues. And they did that with all things on the platform because they said, oh, well, actually what's happening is conservatives on this platform outperform their liberal counterparts, and it was not even close. Conservative content on Facebook moves at a rate that more liberal content can't even dream of. So Facebook just throttled down on the whole thing. And then you know what happened? The amount of traffic that gets funneled into your large media organizations, CNN and MSNBC, and the Washington Post, the New York Times, things like that, it explodes. It went way up. So this is what I'm talking about. The media is social media companies. So Elon Musk buying what is, in essence, the most political media company around and saying, we're just going to let people see what they want to see, it's a good thing for society. I think other companies should do this, or we need to revoke their privileges as platforms. Simple as that. Revoke Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act. Get rid of the protection that places like Facebook and YouTube have against slander and libel laws, and let people start suing them. If you're going to curate content, that's the solution. That's the way to go forward. It's at least an idea. But anyway, this is a good first start. I'm very happy. Elon Musk, I hope he gets Twitter. I hope he starts to own it and watch all these people melt down again. It's going to be fun. Anyway, we're going to leave it there. This news just came out this morning, so this is a little just off the cuff kind of thing. But I hope I said what I mean to say. I believe in the principles of free speech. I believe that someone like Elon Musk owning companies is a good thing because the more free speech, the better. The only cure, I think this is, I might be wrong on my attribute to this quote, but I think this is an old John Locke quote where the only cure for bad speech is more speech. I think that is, but I could be wrong on my attribute there. Anyway, we're going to leave it there for the day. I hope everyone enjoyed it. I will see you on the next one.